We're diving straight into a deeply unsettling, real-world account that comes right out of the New Jersey wilderness. We're calling this explainer Echoes of the Pine Barrens. It revolves around a 24-year-old guy named Daniel, who found himself in the absolute darkest depths of those woods. So settle in and let's let the sheer darkness of this narrative take over.
There's a pretty horrifying rule of survival in this region, a piece of local folklore that locals absolutely swear by. Out in the deep woods, noise is totally normal. Silence? Well, silence is a warning. The saying goes, when the woods go quiet, it means something dominant has just entered the room. Keep that in the back of your mind.
Part 1. Into the Pine Barrens. The timeline here is October 2018. So Daniel, who is a pretty pragmatic city guy, heads out for some backcountry camping. Completely laughing off those local warnings we just talked about, he thinks it's all just campfire stories. But by 2 a.m., the campfire right outside his tent had burned down to this dull, glowing ash. And then he woke up. Not a gradual wake up, just a jarring, terrifying snap from deep sleep to full consciousness in the pitch black. If you have ever actually been to the Pine Barrens at night, you already know to expect this deafening chorus of cicadas and tree frogs. It's incredibly loud. But what Daniel woke up to was an absolute, suffocating silence. It was dead quiet. The reality hit him fast. Something dominant was out there. This brings us to part 2, the suffocating silence, and a thick, milky fog that had rolled into the trees. Daniel's heart is absolutely hammering against his ribs at this point. He grabs his tactical flashlight, slowly unzips the tent flap, and sweeps that beam across the campsite. He's looking for a threat, maybe a bear, right? But there was nothing. Literally nothing. Just this thick fog and that incredibly heavy, dead silence. Just as he was about to retreat back inside his tent, the flashlight beam caught something leaning out from behind a massive pitch pine. It was barely 15 feet away. This thing was easily 7 feet tall, with this impossibly emaciated skin that looked exactly like wet ash, and its sunken eyes caught the light, reflecting this dull, predatory crimson. It was absolutely not a bear. Part 3, the mimic. This is where the evolutionary terror really sets in. Daniel completely froze. He was paralyzed by this deep, primal terror. And then the creature slowly tilted its head at a sickening 90-degree angle, unhinged its jaw, and actually spoke. But it wasn't just any voice. It was Daniel's own voice, perfectly mimicked, yet incredibly hollow and stretched out. It just said, "Daniel, come outside." In that exact split second, the silence finally broke. Thousands of cicadas suddenly started to shriek all at once in this absolute deafening frenzy. And as the noise violently returned to the woods, the creature just dissolved backward into the thick fog with this impossible glitch-like speed. Blind panic instantly took over. Daniel just screamed, violently waking up his friends. They didn't pack a single thing. They abandoned their tents entirely, running blindly to his Jeep in just their socks. They tore down those dirt fire roads in absolute terror until the tires finally hit the paved safety of Route 72. Which brings us to part 4, the voicemail. The story jumps to exactly 2 weeks later. Daniel is safely back in his Philadelphia apartment, trying his absolute hardest to forget the Pine Barrens entirely. But exactly 2 weeks later, his phone buzzes on the nightstand. He checks the time. It is exactly 2:14 a.m. That is the precise minute the terror had reached its peak in the woods. It was a voicemail left by an unknown number. He presses play, probably expecting a spam call. But he didn't hear a wrong number. What he heard was the chaotic, deafening screech of Pine Barren cicadas completely filling up his phone speaker. And then, bleeding right through that thick white noise, was that same hollow, distorted voice. The voice on the phone just whispered, "You run fast, Daniel." Daniel packed his bags that very weekend. There was zero hesitation. To this day, he lives in a high-rise right in the middle of a concrete jungle. He is completely desperate to remain miles and miles away from the nearest tree line. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if the things living out there in the deep woods don't just hunt, but they learn? They learn your voice, they learn your name, and they figure out exactly how to reach you long after you think you've escaped. Think about that for a second the next time you find yourself alone, surrounded by the quiet of the woods.